ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm John Weeks, and this is The Leader.
I instructed Harry to form this organisation, and I alone am responsible for its activities.
Sir Michael Gambon, a titan of the stage and film, an acting legend and a role model. Just some of the tributes being paid to the star following his death aged 82. Stars from all areas of the entertainment industry have been paying homage, including the likes of Dame Helen Mirren, J.K. Rowling, Rupert Grint and screenwriter David Hare. But away from his grand status in the world of acting, many are reminiscing about what he was like as a person. He was known for his mischievousness, his naughtiness, and for being a magnificent trickster.
Mischievous is, I think, understating it slightly. He had a really infamous habit of telling absolute whoppers to journalists and being delighted when they made it into print.
Nick Curtis, our Chief Theatre Critic and host of the Evening Standard Theatre podcast, interviewed Sir Michael himself back in 2010.
One of the more famous instances was he told a journalist that he started out as a ballet dancer but had to turn to acting after an accident when he fell off the stage into the timpani section. So I think you always had to treat what he told you with a certain measure of caution. I don't think he really liked interviews. I think he wasn't a trained actor. I think the process of it was a mystery to him. I think it was a compulsion to him. And I think that's one of the things that made his performances, particularly on stage, so sort of electric, was that he didn't really know where it came from and he didn't see any need to explore or expound it. And he really didn't want to talk about his private life. I said to him, can I ask you briefly about, being the father of two sons later in life? He said, oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. No. It was the most graceful and gracious brushing off of a question I've ever had. He had a pilot's license, and he did at one point say to Terence Rigby, an actor with a morbid fear of flying, come up with me, Terry, come up with me in my plane. I'll cure you of your fear of flying. Don't worry about it. I'll see you right. Went up in the plane with Terence Rigby at about 10,000 feet. Gambon feigned a heart attack and slumped over the controls, which you can imagine how awful that would be for somebody already in the grips of panic. But there was a lighter side to him as well. There's lots of things appearing on social media today about him organising water fights across the backstage atrium at the National Theatre. So yeah, I think he was, as I say, he was a big figure in lots of ways and, sort of difficult in some ways, but there's a lot of talk of his kindness from younger actors out there today as well. I think he was quite a unique figure and not quite unique, but part of a sort of dwindling link to the past, to that original National Theatre Company, to the last days of repertory theatre really in the 60s. He first made his name really at Birmingham Rep. And a sort of huge panoply of work across which he worked.
The Irish-born actor made his stage debut in 1960 and went on to enjoy 57 years on stage and screen, most famously through the 2000s, making his appearance as Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movie franchise.
It'll certainly be something that generation will remember him for, and probably chiefly remember him for. I mean, I'm of a generation that I first came to him through Dennis Potter's The Singing Detective in 1986.
Okay, so what's the story? Who's the dame? And where's the body?
I'm sorry?
There was a body, too. I know that. You know that.
And then Peter Greenaway's The Cook, The Thief, His Wife and Her Lover in 1989. Those are the things that introduced me to him. So we all remember, everybody will remember him in different ways, and it's a testament to the variety of his ability, really. It's absolutely fine if some people want to remember him as Dumbledore.
Fans and critics say he was just as good on stage as he was on screen, performing in Shakespeare productions to starring in a 4-month Broadway run of David Hare's Skylight in 1995.
I think I first saw him on stage in Ben Jonson's Volpone at the Almeida, where he was just extraordinary. As I say, I knew him at that stage as a sort of film and TV actor, and was blown away by how astonishing he was in that. I saw him in Skylight. I didn't see everything he's done since sort of 1990, but I'd say a good sort of 70 to 80% of it. He was tremendous in Beckett, particularly in those very sort of boiled down, quiet plays. He could express a huge amount of sort of emotion and mournfulness through very little dialogue and through very little physical expression. You know, he had extraordinarily long, expressive hands, but he could also be incredibly still on stage, as he was in the Beckett roles. He was a terrific stage performer, and he kept coming back as long as he could. I mean, in the last 10 years of his career, he said that it was increasingly difficult for him to remember long speeches or to learn long scripts. So most of the last things he did were fairly short Beckett plays. But again, given how famous he was, given how much money Dumbledore must have earned him, the fact that right towards the end he was doing a tiny Beckett two-hander in a basement in Jermyn Street, you know, speaks how seriously he approached his craft, even if he didn't take it very seriously.
And his performances were well awarded over the years. A Golden Globe, a Screen Actors Guild Award, a Tony Award. You name it, he probably won it. No,
and I think he won 2 Evening Standard Awards. Yeah, he did win just about everything going. I don't think awards meant very much to him. It's a weird thing that Things obviously did. You know, he obviously loved stuff. There's another lovely story that's been going around him is that Tom Felton, you know, who played Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter, was fumbling a sort of crucial scene. I think it's possibly the scene where Dumbledore dies. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen all those films. He kept fluffing his lines, and so he and Gambon went for a cigarette, because Gambon was a dedicated smoker, certainly when I interviewed him in about 2010. So you know, 82 was not a bad age for him to get to. But so they went for a cigarette, and Tom Felton said to him, "I'm so sorry, I know the lines, I don't know what's going wrong." And Gambon apparently said to him, "My dear boy, do you know how much they're paying for me? The longer we overrun, the more likely it is I'll get a Ferrari out of this."
At the Evening Standards Theatre Awards in 2016, Sir Michael talked about his departure from the stage due to health issues and how he missed performing in theatres.
Because I can't be in plays anymore, because I can't remember lines, because I've got something wrong with my brain.
Do you miss the stage?
Enormously, yeah. I'm just waiting for one of these blokes to give me a part in one of their plays where I'm like a butler and I come on every 2 minutes and don't know what I'm doing.
Let's take a break now. In part 2, how London is paying tribute to the late Sir Michael Gambon.
I would be very surprised if there isn't some commemoration for him, probably at the Pinter Theatre, which was where he performed a lot of Pinter plays.
So, as the tributes continue for Sir Michael Gambon, how is London marking his life's work on stage and screen?
Well, the West End theatres are dimming their lights tonight, Friday night. It's only happened sort of 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. The last time, I think, was when Stephen Sondheim died. I would be very surprised if there isn't some commemoration for him, probably at the Comedy Theatre, at the Pinter Theatre, which was where he performed a lot of Pinter plays. You know, that place has become a sort of, weirdly, for a Victorian Central London West End theatre, it's become quite a sort of crucible of experimentation. And so I think to actually have some sort of a plaque or a portrait of Gambon in there would be lovely.
So will we see a Sir Michael Gambon statue or similar pop up soon?
I'm not aware of any plans so far, so I'm just putting that out there. If anyone in Theatreland is listening to that, or the owners of the Harold Pinter Theatre, then that might be a nice idea.
So, whether it's being remembered as the most powerful wizard at Hogwarts, a titan of the stage, or simply a fun, mischievous trickster and friend, Sir Michael Gambon's legacy will live on.
I think as someone who enriched the lives of those who saw his performances or worked with him, you know, I mean, I think his legacy will be that he really was a one-off. I can't think of a sort of comparable personality or somebody who had, you know, I'm not saying there are not other actors who are as great, but I can't think of anybody who was great in the way that he was, as I say, physically imposing, not a handsome man, you know, I mean, a man built for character roles, but to become a sort of a lead actor, to be a romantic lead in Skylight was a great thing. He was a lovely romantic lead opposite Glenda Jackson in an almost forgotten film that I loved called Turtle Diary back in the 80s as well. And I think just the whole sort of personality thing that as I say, he really didn't seem to give a damn what anybody thought of him, what he did, lived his life by his own standards, wouldn't be seen as fashionable to be a sort of chain-smoking driver of fast cars and gun owner these days, but he was all those things, as well as an incredibly subtle interpreter of Shakespeare and Pinter, and yes, he was Dumbledore.
For more news, interviews and analysis, pick up the Evening Standard newspaper or head to standard.co.uk. That's The Leader. Thanks for listening. We're back on Monday at 4 o'clock.